Well, welcome to our second panel discussion here in the forum. We are going to talk about industrial policy and development in the advent of the fourth industrial revolution. We've got a fantastic panel, as you can see, which I'll introduce in a short while, to discuss this very important issue. The fourth industrial revolution has happened because it's been organic in nature. It's not been a result of a conscious strategy or industrial policy, and that's actually allowed the private sector to move ahead with little or no governmental involvement. What we have is a changing and an increasingly diverse landscape. This is shifted to greater government involvement, both in already industrialized economies, but also in developing nations, and that is a key issue here, where adoption is still in its infancy. This panel will discuss the role of industrial policy in the advent of 4IR, with special emphasis on those developing countries. We'll look at how the intelligent crafting of industrial policy is becoming a crucial activity for governments. On our panel today, we have Professor Luciano Galvão Coutinho, invited professor from IE Unicamp from Brazil. Thank you very much for coming here today. Dr. Yoonju Kim, Chief Innovation and Partnerships Department, Telecommunication Development Bureau, International Telecommunication Union. Thank you, Dr. Kim, for coming here today. Mr. Hiroshi Kuniyoshi, Deputy to the Director General, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, known as UNIDO. And of course, His Excellency Cham Pradesh, Senior Minister of Industry and Handicrafts from Cambodia. Thank you all for coming and taking the time out to contribute to this very important summit that we have here, GMIS 2019. Now, the aim of this panel is to discuss the role of industrial policy of 4IR. The conversation will focus on opportunities and barriers from governments and their interventions, the dual need to foster adoption of 4IR technologies, and on the one hand, while mitigating outcomes of the same on the other. In this discussion, as I mentioned before, we have got a special emphasis on developing countries, and we'll start, I think, with an opening statement first from each of our guests, which will last about 2 to 3 minutes, and they'll explain their interest in this, their thoughts, and where we're at from their perspective. If we could start with you, Professor Coutinho, please begin.
Yes, it is, first of all, thanks. It's an honor to participate in this event, in this panel. But let me start saying that the governmental policies were in the fourth revolution from the beginning. So I don't know whether I agree that let the private sector lead. I think government policies were in the origin of the new technological revolution from the beginning. But there is, however, the consensus that now there is a technological race. Leading developed economies have very deliberate strategies. We started with the US Advanced Manufacturing Program in the 2010, 2012, the German 4.0 strategy, and then the China 225 strategy, the Korean strategy, the Japanese, the French strategy. So all important developed countries and developing economies have strategies. So time is running, and I think there is an urgency to catch up. And emerging economies that are not moving or preparing to move fast may become obsolete in this new order and may be excluded from the new framework. that will be emerging in the global division of industrial labor, So industrial policies are more important than ever. Now, those industrial policies must change its framework. We have to rethink the nature, the programs, the tools, and the way the industrial policies operate in order to tackle these new challenges. And among those challenges, one is the most difficult, is how to induce small business to join, because big corporations will be capable of moving or perishing and opening up the space to others, but SMEs does require special attention. So that's for my first 3 minutes. I don't know whether it's it.
Okay, Dr. Kim, would you like to share your thoughts?
Thank you very much. Excellency, distinguished participants, and ladies and gentlemen. I first would like to express our gratitude to this host government and organizers, IE and the GMIS and the UNIDO, and I feel very privileged to be invited to this GMIS 2019. Yes, ITU as a UN specialized agency is known for telecommunications, and now we talk about digital technology, has been evolving and innovating along with the technologies and associated policies and regulations over 150 years with the aim of connecting the world and especially unconnected. As the fourth industrial revolution is driven by a fusion of the technologies from biology, robotics, manufacturing to digital, it must involve all stakeholders from the public and the private sectors and academia to civil society in cross sectors. I'm talking about the cross sectors from agriculture to manufacturing. ITU as a very unique UN agency composed of not only 193 member states, but also 800 public and the private sectors, and even actually academia. It is a natural multi-stakeholders platform to lead to fourth industrial revolution. Indeed, we have been contributing to the core technologies such as Internet of Things, cloud computing, and the big data, mobile, especially mobile revolutions, and today's artificial intelligence called AI, through setting international standards, radio regulations, and the policy guidelines. AI is indeed adding its value in advancing education, healthcare, manufacturing, and even mining, actually smart cities, and the safe mobility and more encompass the world today in ecosystem. Thus, ITU has been actually organizing AI for Good Summit, participating or partnering with 37 other UN sister agencies this year, with 1,000 participation and the participants from the cross sectors, and then to accelerate the progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals with sharing opportunities and then challenges such as job displacement. With the advent of the fourth industrial revolution, in fact, the role of the government, you're talking about policy, has entered a new age. Then what is actually clear is that no one nation, no one organization, and no single company alone can formulate industrial policy. Thus, the path towards the transformative, safe, trusted, and inclusive fourth industrial revolution will require unprecedented collaborations among government, industry, academia, and the civil society in ever interconnected and the interdependent world today and then beyond with the innovative industrial policies. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kuniyoshi.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We are co-organizer of this GMIS Summit. The UNIDO is a co-organizer of GMIS Summit and also an organizer of this session. And so the intention that we organized this session is to reconfirm, basically, the industrial policy is very important. And especially facing this change brought by the fourth industrial, is being brought by the fourth industrial revolution, the industrial policy is even more important. The professor rightly pointed out that it's more important ever, the industrial policy. That's the message I'd like to deliver through this session. Actually, we are facing the change of the environment of manufacturing or industry. But the industry has been changing always. And technology used in the industry has been changing always. What's the difference is, I would say, the pace of change and uncertainty in the near future. But the industrial policies that aim to gap the reality and what we want to have, and also the information, it's basically has the same or the similar as we had before in different focuses and priorities. For example, the investment promotion, technology transfer, capacity building, training, and all these things are very important. But say in this era, we need more investment in the digital infrastructure, for example, or for the education, we need to have young people with education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and these kind of STEM or ICT, or say R&D are also very important. And the fourth one is perhaps say rather specific in this current situation. So we are facing the paradigm shift. So there is as I said, certain uncertainties for the near future. We know there will be a fourth, say, outcome of the fourth industrial revolution, and that will bring more effective, efficient industries. But still, we don't know exactly what it is. Also, we don't know what that change brings our society, our world, about the gap between the industrial countries and developing countries and so on. So I would like to say we need to think about the beyond the current situation, just not analyzing the current setting and trying to gap trying to address the gap in the current situation, within the current framework. Rather, we should think about the beyond the current situation and to have a kind of say, flexible strategy for the near future, putting emphasis on the education and partnership. For now, no.
Okay, thank you very much. His Excellency.
Thank you, Nadira. I come from Cambodia, and you know this is a small country with population of 16 million people. Our economy has been going very fast over the past 10 years. We secure an average growth, GDP growth of about 7% per year. Last year was 7.5%. You may say that we have a very healthy economy, but it's just the tips of the iceberg. With the event of the fourth industrial revolution, what we have seen is that only 10 to 15% of our industry embrace the fourth industrial revolution technologies, while the rest are still living business as usual, very cozy with technologies that date from the second and third revolution. For this, as policymakers, we have to bear that in mind on how to change. We could be successful during the third industrial revolution, but we could not be successful if we are not smart enough. For that reason, for our government, we have to address the issues that are facing our private sector. Our SMEs do not understand the benefits of adopting new technologies, the four industrial revolution technologies. First, they don't understand why it's important for them. Second, they are afraid of investing in new technologies because they don't know what is the benefit, so they don't know. They don't dare to invest. Second thing, they lack the skill to understand the need to change. For that reason, for the government, it's very important to build public awareness for those people to understand that time is changing, the market is changing, the world is changing. If you are not smart enough, you cannot adapt yourself enough, you would lose. And what we are going to face as government policymakers, we would see a lot of bankruptcies, we would see a lot of displace of a workforce. Job disappeared because of automation or whatever. So for that reason, it's very imperative for the government to build the right infrastructure right away. For that reason, in Cambodia, we have set up, we adopted technologies very fast. Mobile phone, for example, we adopted 4G at the time that some developed countries have not even adopted 4G. And now, next year, we're going to move to 5G with Huawei. Not waiting, we have to adopt immediately 5G technologies. And for this, it's very important, optical cable, we build 50,000 kilometers of optical cable. And we have also submarine that link marine cable, that optical cable that link Asia to Europe, and we are hooked to this system. So we are connected to the world. But is it enough? We have still to build all the ecosystem that is needed to support our industry. For that reason, for the government, it's very imperative we start with building the right infrastructure. We have also to build skill, and build skill through pushing to introducing STEM in our education system, so that by the next 5 years, we have enough jobs, enough skilled people to embrace the new technologies, without which the situation would be desperate for Cambodia in the long run. Okay.
Thank you very much, all of you. You've made some really interesting and valid points, and already highlighting the problems that some developing countries have. It's great that everyone's getting together and talking about it, but actually one of the biggest problems is adoption, isn't it? As His Excellency pointed out. Now, what I'd like to do is pose an opening question to all of you, the same question, and we'll take it from there. And if we focus on policy and what type of industrial policies would successfully foster the implementation of those 4 IR technologies. We've had one example of what Cambodia's government's trying to do, and very eloquently put, you said, but is it enough? And what do you think governments should be mindful of in terms of mitigating a negative effects of 4IR adoption? In other words, potential job losses. That's what people are worried about. We've seen it happen. What are the solutions? Let's start with you, Professor Coutinho.
Well, I can point out some common traces of policies that could be successful. One is it must be coherent and must combine the engagement of the private sector with the high level of government, the engagement of the highest level of government to coordinate the various governmental agencies. So need for much closer, coherent coordination of the policies, because policies are more complex, because you need telecom infrastructure, you need broadband, you need everything. You need new standards, standards of cybersecurity, standards of labor safety, new standards for education. You must change the mindsets towards the digital new world, and that requires new engineering, new forms of education. So there is a need for broader, coherent coordination of policies. So this is the first point. The second important point related to the adoption challenges have to do with how big leading companies may help in the value chain to qualify and to help SMEs to engage. We were discussing previous panel how direct foreign investment could be of help, but I think this is a mission for large leading companies how to help. But there is also important room for how SMEs should be supported. As the Minister President was saying, SMEs do not understand and know the benefits. So how to, and in the recent research that we've done in Brazil, about half of the companies, small firms, do not understand yet. And they do not envisage, and half of these do not envisage their future 10 years from now. So they are still in 1.0, 2.0 generation, and they do not know how to move. So I think support for a step-by-step evolution for SMEs. Now, you posed another very difficult question, which is the how to create jobs for everyone. And I think we need to revolutionize our understanding of this, because new jobs will need to be created in the service sectors in many areas that are not replaceable by like entertaining, by taking care of the older people, by psychological services, by so many new fields that is in the answer. I'm not a specialist of that, and this is priority, should be a priority in research. And this is an under-discussed issue, how to create the jobs for the future. And I think UNIDO should engage also in this topic, because industrial policies cannot evade this issue. But I will stop here.
Okay, Dr. Kim.
Thank you very much. In fact, that is very the important questions in this era of the fourth industrial revolution. Transformation of the world, whether it's developed or even developing countries, is very challenging or changing faster than ever in this era. However, the world may not be or cannot be transformed by the technology alone, but the shared policy with the political will and taking into account the human intelligence or even human factors such as creativity and even empathy will be the prerequisite to fit for the future and then accelerate the SDGs in both the developed and the developing countries. Having actually recognized the positive and the negative impacts from these technologies, especially these technologies from actually IT's point of view, especially even the digital infrastructure, we call it broadband or 5G in the ecosystem, ITU has been undertaking a digital transformation journey with and for our member states, or the members, including policymakers, regulators, industry, academia, you just name it. And through its mission of connecting the world, especially focusing not only digital technologies, but also digital and affordable digital infrastructure with the digital skills development, as the professor mentioned about the importance of the skills and jobs. And then according to actually our recent research and assessment undertaken in several developing countries from actually Africa to actually Asia, the ways or prerequisites to the first industrial revolution include shared vision, political will or even political leadership as demonstrated in some African countries like Rwanda, and then transparent policy and regulations, and then required and then affordable actually infrastructure, especially digital infrastructure, and then talent, and then most importantly, the champions, and then capital and the resources, and the markets, fostering startups, and then SMEs, especially SMMEs, and then entrepreneurial and the innovative culture. Indeed, the digital technologies and the affordable and the infrastructures are leading to huge actually potentials for transforming digital economy, or even this fourth industrial revolution in cross sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, mining, and so on in general. It is thus very, very important that the countries, especially developing countries, and develop and then adapt their own industrial policy, customized for their reality in digital ecosystems in the advent of 4IL. And then coming back to your job, this is actually our big debate in AI Summit and then a couple of weeks ago in Geneva. And then many are talking about we are losing jobs, and especially introducing and advancing this AI or even fourth industrial revolution. But let me just quote some kind of recent study. According to CNBC study and an article, and the robotics or robots may replace 800 million works by 2030. It's very scary. But another study that actually I just read that in the plane last week, in South Africa alone, you know that South Africa is one of the country who is very devoting and the leading towards the fourth industrial revolution under the leadership of actually its president. And then they say, and then they are going to they may create the job and 4 million jobs, and then online actually economic growth, and then enormously. So this is actually, and then South Africa alone. So this is like a debate. And then IT also undertook some study, and actually by the Professor Rahul Katz. And then he analyzed 3 different steps. One is construction and the manufacturing effects, which means through, you talk about, I think the minister from Cambodia talked about, you already trying to introduce now the 5G from the 4G. In order to do that, you need to build the infrastructure. So it can create the job like any other infrastructure. And the second effect can be innovation effect, which means AI for other sectors I just mentioned, from agriculture, education, health, whatever. So it can be very creative, innovative jobs can be actually created. Another kind of effect can be spillover kind of effects, meaning efficiency. Or even actually the world today, you cannot just live without this kind of technologies. So yes, you may have immediate kind of a job loss, especially low-skilled jobs, but it has a huge potential with the high-skilled job. For that, we need to have some kind of a skill developments can be emphasized by not only actually UN system like UNIDO and ITU, but at a country level, at the government, and even schools per se. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kuniyoshi.
Thank you. Talking about the policies which cooperate the adoption of the taking the opportunities of the 4IR and also mitigating the risk. Partly I already talked about that kind of things. And in addition, I would like to say we should discuss the things sector by sector. Which industry you are talking about? Say, we tend to say the opportunities for IR, or maybe the introduction for IR in the advanced countries might, say, influence the jobs in the developing countries. That might be partly true, but it depends on which industry you are talking about. So if, say, there is some kind of risk you identify in certain industry, you have to think about how to prepare for the coming, say, problem. By, say, retraining the workforce or to give the different type of job and these kind of things. And for the industry, but still, say, for the time being, seem to be strong enough, competitive enough as the labor-intensive industry in developing country. You can gain some time to prepare. So, but overall, perhaps what we need to think about is to own your own capability. That's the key word. And how to gain your own capability is analyzing the current situation and, say, having the good training, a good education of the people, and eventually to think about the whole transformation of the industry as a country. That's more or less what should be the answer to your question. But I would like to add that for that, I think the partnership or the cooperation with the government and international organizations like UNIDO or ITU, or say some other entities, including the research institute and academia, what is the most important. And UNIDO is conducting the diagnosis of the, say, country and also advise the policies based on this kind of diagnosis. So I think we can work together. Actually, we are having the PCP project in Cambodia. Basically, this PCP is designed in this line, what I explained. Thank you.
Your microphone.
Hello, you can hear me again. Thank you very much. And finally, Your Excellency.
When we address the issue that the private sector is facing, what is important for us is build their ability to absorb new technologies, new knowledge, and also build their resiliency and build their the way for them to adapt. And for us, it's a little bit difficult. Difficult in the sense that with the advancement and the fast advancement of technologies nowadays, life cycle of products is very short. And I cannot believe in what I'm preaching. The problem is that if I go to tell the private sector, you build this, produce this product, it's going to have a life, it's very well, it's a big demand for the world for the next 20 years. I cannot trust this because the life cycle is so short. Maybe this product is going to change. So I do not believe in the lesson I can give to the private sector. That's a problem we are facing. For that reason, it's very imperative also that we have to not just to educate the private sector, we have to build the linkage between industry and university or academia so that they learn from each other, they try to resolve the problem, and for the government side, we build the infrastructure that they need, or the context where they can develop this type of partnership. This is very important from the side of the government. But as I mentioned to you, the world is changing so fast. It's like we are taking the train in a big metropole. You have to change the train many stations before you go to the other side of the city. When is the time that we have to tell the private sector to change the train? This is very important for government. Sometimes you take 2 stations, you have to change the train. Sometimes you go 5 stations before you change. Who can advise the private sector that, oh, you can go this way, you have still 5 stations to go, or 2 stations? We cannot. And this is a problem that we are facing. That's why we are using the expertise of UNIDO to build a country partnership in order to be a kind of radar or kind of a compass for us to move. But even I believe that even UNIDO cannot advise, or even intelligence, nobody can tell me which is the best product we have to build for the next 20 years. Impossible. You see, that's why building the ability of people to adapt and be able to change on time is very important. They can change only if they have the required skill, they have the required education. That's why we are now focusing most on the education of our workforce. And the problem with Cambodia is that we have 2/3 of our population that is still under 30 years. So these people can be able to be the critical mass to adopt the new technologies because we provide them education, tertiary education in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we also provide for those who are lower skilled with TWED, technical vocational education and training. With this, I believe, would be sufficient to get more skilled people. But nevertheless, I believe that a lot of coordination with all the academy and the university and with the private sector is also important to ensure that we have the required partnership to move ahead. And this is something that Cambodia have to learn from many other countries as well. Thank you.
Well, Your Excellency, I mean, you've really highlighted a lot of problems, and this theme is running through now. It's the education. So if we're looking at a lot of those developing countries, if the education policy is not working to make those decisions for the future, how are they going to be making the right decisions in terms of industrial policy? Should governments apply policy measures that don't only allow those firms investing in 4IR to increase their value, their shareholder value, but also it's about the benefits of society, the rest of society? What do you think about that?
You see, nowadays there is a change of the total landscape. Before, we are training people to hook to the global value chain. Now the value chain is reversed. And what we should explain now to the private sector. This is something already. The second thing is also very difficult also to understand is that to tell them that we have to move to this direction, how long it lasts, we cannot say. That's why sometimes I was joking and say that we have to turn government officials or policymakers into sensors. Equip us with AI, equip us with augmented reality, whatever you can, so that we can sense, we can foresee what the private sector have to move, which direction the private sector have to move. And this is something that sometimes is not a joke, it's reality. We have to move in tandem.
It is a reality, isn't it, Professor Coutinho? It's a real reality because, again, you know, we can sit and talk about all the benefits to the world, but actually, in those countries where people are living hand to mouth, they're not really going to be looking 5 days ahead, a month ahead, let alone 10 years ahead of what their country is going to be like. How do you think policy measures can support SMEs, particularly in developing countries, to adopt 4I technologies when they are living hand to mouth, but they also obviously have a vision for their own future? How can they become more competitive within their own localities, but also with the big boys in that global market? Is it possible?
Yes, I have an optimistic view about these. I think about broader issues, I think as a takeaway of what we said before, education, training, labs, test beds, applied research, standards, regulations, metrology, infrastructure. So all financing, this is all governmental policies that must be coordinated, and they must be SMEs friendly. But now, for SMEs, I think we should start with one thing, which is digitalization of management. So we got to change the mindset of the entrepreneurs, and they must move to adopt our ERPs, enterprise resources planning softwares that help manage from supply chain to production to sales, marketing, deliveries, and logistics. Those softwares, however, must be simplified and customized. And those softwares are available commercially for big companies, but they're not available for small companies. And for small companies, there is a big need of customization of those softwares. So here is a space that do require policies. So that's the first step, digital management. And then to move for the digitalization of manufacturing. And fortunately, the digitalization of manufacturing can be made in a stepwise manner, because we can start with sensorization of old machines, and then sensorization and connection. And then you can take machines that have already a computerized numerical control and update that, and then connect. So you may choose to do it step by step by connecting the main production lines and then the auxiliary production line by blocks. But in order to do this introduction of digital technology in the shop floor, you need also customization of engineering services. So there will be a lot of demand for engineers, software process engineers that can help for the process of evolution, until it could reach a complete integration of the plant, and then a complete integration of the supply chain, of the whole value chain. So this must be a planned process. There are interesting experiences. For instance, Germany has a program for the full digitalization of the supply chain of the capital goods sector and has a successful program in how, so we should extract lessons for the successful programs in place in many areas, in many countries, and then move. That requires support for integrator engineering firms, need the support in financing, in support in preparing those processes. So I do have it is possible, we can do it. However, it does require a coordination, does require special programs. And I think this is an area of focus for policies for the future.
So, Professor Coutinho, he's mentioned the processes that he thinks should be implemented to help support those SMEs. But Dr. Kim, how can this work in developing countries? Again, we've got to look more specific. Look more specifically at the different challenges that those small SMEs are facing in developing countries. Professor's just mentioned an example from Germany. Is that possible to match models that have worked in developed countries to those developing countries? And if we look at the main regulatory challenges and necessities for those new ICT ecosystems to work as a result of 4IR, is it possible?
Before answer whether it's possible or not, and then maybe actually let me just sit back. If you're talking about the regulatory challenge around that, and then this actually for industrial revolution technology is actually driven and then transferred even faster by private sector. So it is very the timely and then efficient regulation to adopt and implement this industrial policy is ever challenging for both developed and actually developing world. So 4IL actually require a whole new approach in regulations. We call it the paradigm shift towards like 4IL. It means that we need to have a more creative, and then we call it then collaborative in the approach of the policy making. So neither the regulators or even government, nor private sector alone will be able to meet the needs and then challenge for the fourth industrial revolutions, as a regulation in the advent of the fourth industrial revolution may not be able to actually catch up the speed of the technology revolution, and moreover, is it required for more than one industrial sector due to the convergence of this technology. I just mentioned earlier about the AI. So we actually demonstrate and then AI for health, AI for agriculture, and then AI for manufacturing and so on. So which means that the sector, even we are just working very closely with now World Bank together with the Gates Foundation for digital finance. So here you can see the collaboration between the digital sector and the like ITU and the World Bank and the finance sector to bring together to find out the regulatory challenge as well as a solution. So a flexible and then light touch and then transparent, and then most importantly, collaborative regulation through open process, and then platforms participated by all the stakeholders, government, and then industry, and then innovator, and then academia is the key to ensure that the industrial policies for the fourth industrial revolution can be customized and then adopted for the countries, especially developing countries, to achieve the SDGs. Means no one can left behind.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If we look at that, no one should be left behind, Mr. Kuniyoshi. We're hearing a lot about the speed at which these 4IR technologies are being adopted, mainly in the developed world, obviously not in every sector, and obviously not SMEs necessarily, because there are still similar issues going on there within developed countries. So, again, if we're focusing on developing countries, what can the governments do? What can they realistically do to ensure fast adoption of 4IR in industrialized economies? And again, this question of competing on the global market, how are they going to do that, in your opinion?
I think the answer to your question is basically the repetition of what I said, of what all the panelists said, basically. So, yes, so we are facing quite severe challenges, especially the developing countries, and especially small and medium enterprises. That's true. And it could be very, very difficult to overcome that situation. But it's clear that we all aware of that. And the Excellency rightly said that Cambodia has already adopted quite, say, steady steps to implement the better policy in a country. And we are supporting that. And other organizations are also working with, I guess, with Cambodia. So, I think to this kind of discussions, it's not really productive to just say fueling the fire, but what we should be doing is to share our experience, share the different understanding, different idea, and to cooperate each other. In the opening statement of our Director General, Mr. Lee Yun, I don't remember exactly, but what he said is something like that. The fourth industrial revolution affects everyone. So everyone should be listened to. That's why we established this Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit. So this is not a solution, I agree, that this is just one step forward. But starting with that, the working together is perhaps the only way to solve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you. I am, excuse me, going to open up. I think we've got time maybe for one, maybe two questions, if anyone has any to any of our guests here. Just stand up and shout out. Any offers here? Yes, please go ahead. Ooh, that's very quiet.
While we wait,
Yes.
make a brief comment. I think the challenge that we're talking about, we have a focus in manufacturing because GMIS is a manufacturing forum, but it's the same. New technologies are horizontal. So it's the challenges for agribusiness, for particular farm sector, for farmers, for the service sector, for mining, for everything, are very similar. So one interesting, and also because those technologies being horizontal, they make industrial policy very close to the other policies. So I think it's maybe obsolete to think of industrial policies as a separate thing.
I think that's certainly, we're seeing this from each one of you contributing here today, is everything is extremely interlinked, as obviously a lot of us know, but it's something to bear in mind. You're absolutely right, that it can't be very isolated. We've got a microphone now. Okay, that's great. If you would like to pose your question.
Yes, I have a question. I'm not sure whether it falls under industrial policy or not, but what do you think about an entity that oversees the readiness or maturity of the manufacturing sector for Industry 4.0?
Who would you like that addressed to?
Anyone is fine. Yes.
Do any of you want to take that question?
Well, I think readiness diagnosis is a very useful tool within the policies because it makes it very clear how the whole process, evolution, in which stages we are. So it is a key concept for policy making and for policy action, because the requirements for policy in each of the stages are very specific and require specific attention. So I think it's very useful tool in policy.
Thank you, Professor Coutinho. Any more?
If I may add, the World Economic Forum has developed a diagnostic index that compare about 100 countries, so you know exactly at which stage you are, readiness at every stage. For the case of Cambodia, we are still almost 95 out of 100, you see. So that's, we are not yet ready, but at least it's a good diagnostic, but they don't tell us where to go. That's a problem.
Okay, I think because of time, I think I would like each one of you now just to make a very quick 1-minute closing statement to explain your position after this discussion. Should we start with you, Professor?
Well, I would say that we have a big challenge, but I'm positively optimistic that to say, yes, we can. Developing economies can make the catch up, but we must change our mindset to understand the nature of the challenges of this new industrial revolution. That so old policies are definitely obsolete, and we need to think of new policies, and the design of those new policies not yet mature. And although we know the directions, so we know how to move, not yet in a complete fashion, but we have the overall sense of direction. So we got to concentrate our energy in conceive efficient, customized policies.
Okay, Dr. Kim.
Thank you very much. Learning all these interactions today, and then we reconfirm that ITU is committed to enhance a strong and then innovative partnership with UNIDO and then other UN systems, and then develop a fourth industrial revolution technology through international standards, transparent policy, collaborative regulations, and then constant skills development, so that all stakeholders in our member states can share and shape their own policy, industrial policy, and then leapfrog in the advent of fourth industrial revolution, and then achieve SDGs targets together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kuniyoshi, obviously the UN plays an important part in all of this. Please give your thoughts.
Thank you. I put the emphasis on the uncertainty of the outcome of the fourth industrial revolution and also the impact of that for IR, especially on the developing countries. And uncertainty is the uncertainty. But I would like to say that that means, we can't predict that, but we can influence the outcome as well. That's basically the industrial policy or our work together. we can work together, we can, so that we can guide, we guide the direction of the fourth industrial revolution and also the impact on the developing countries. And of course, we are ready to work for that and with, in cooperation with ITC as well. Thank you.
Oh, can you? I just lost you for a second there. And finally, Your Excellency.
Well, for Cambodia, I think that it's now the right time to try to push the private sector to understand the challenges that they're facing, and through public awareness. We have also tried to induce them to adopt new technologies through providing tax waiving, income tax waiving for 2 years, but it doesn't work. So we do not believe that tax incentive is going to work for SMEs to adopt new technologies. But they are going to be forced by the world demand. For that reason, what is important is to build the awareness is very important. Innovation center, SME incubator center, these are the things that we have to build to support them to understand the need to change. And this, I believe that this platform, GMIS, is also a very good enlightening platform for not just government officials, but also for our private sector to learn from that and know where the world is going to. Thank you.
And we can see from all of our distinguished guests that, you know, some of the threads that we've definitely seen today: education, collaboration, communication, cooperation, and for those countries possibly who are better off to be helping those who aren't. Thank you, all of you. Professor Luciana Galvão Coutinho, Dr. Kim, thank you very much, Mr. Kuniyoshi, and of course, Your Excellency, thank you all for joining us here and sharing your thoughts. A real good contribution there. Now, that is the end of our program today at the Forum, actually. I hope you found all these sessions very interesting. I certainly have. It's been absolutely fascinating. We've got another 2 days, so please go and enjoy as much as you can. Discuss, listen, take in, contribute. It's all for the benefit of the industry and the world. And please remember, also collate your feedback if you can't, and feedback into GMIS. It'll be most interesting for us, and I'm sure for yourselves to see the outcome of this fantastic summit that we have today. Thank you all.